Hello, my name is Brian Solis. Thank you for joining us today for this very special episode of the Innovation Today GenAI Perspectives video series. I am your host for this episode. My name is Brian. I'm the head of global innovation at ServiceNow. I've been a longtime analyst, digital anthropologist, author, futurist, and I'm still trying to keep up with all these trends. But today, it's not about me. Today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Misra. She is the general manager of AI. Well, this is going to be a title, so get ready. General manager of AI, data, and emerging technologies, business development at Microsoft. Welcome, Dr. Misra. It is actually a pleasure to be here with you. We're all honored to be in your presence. I look forward to speaking with you and learning from you. But before we get started, can you share a little bit about your background and about your focus?
Yeah, sure. Brian, thank you. It's actually my pleasure to be here. I've been watching your work for a while, and I'm really deeply excited to be having this conversation with you. Yeah, so I head our business development effort for all things AI, data, and emerging technology, as you rightly said. What does that mean? That means that all strategic partnerships that we do in the company that really touch those broad areas fall within my team. And it might need a little bit more explanation since, well, first of all, what are the emerging technologies? So, of course, AI services, AI platform, and then all of our data platform. In the emerging technologies bucket, we have traditionally put things like mixed reality, AR, VR, our partnerships around Web3, our partnerships around metaverse, autonomous systems, industrial metaverse, and autonomous transport, as well as silicon, because as you can imagine, a lot of things depend on silicon in that whole big bucket that I've explained to you. And in terms of strategic partnerships, large surface area that Microsoft has in terms of, different partnership angles, and not just our sort of consumption of our services and our capabilities and our products, but also how we can lean in and help with go-to-market, with other strategic aspects that we can friendly partner with as well.
Wow. I got to imagine that you have tons of free time every day.
Every day, twiddling my thumbs every day.
That is actually, personally as a geek, I just every tech trend that you just named, I was thinking about it as you were saying that. I love it. I love it. I love it. I've tracked it. I personally write a newsletter just to force myself to keep up with the meaning of these trends because they're so great, so that any customer, any company that wants to know what's going on, that I at least have some kind of knowledge or some kind of perspective. And it is incredible, the number of not just trends, but the acceleration of those trends. And one of which we're going to talk about today is Gen AI. And I know everybody's talking about Gen AI today, but you have been on the forefront of it. And there's one thing I'd love to talk about just right from the get-go is you were responsible for the due diligence on the OpenAI partnership, which we know is front and center of a lot of what Microsoft is doing with its go-to-market. I would love to hear more about what that was about and sort of where this is all going with Microsoft.
Yeah, so I've been involved with the OpenAI partnership since 2019. So the handful of people that were involved in the 2019 partnership, it's been an amazing journey. They are a great partner of ours, and you can see the IP that we have come through a lot of Microsoft's first-party services and platforms, but also being able to offer it as a API that runs on Azure to be able to have the best models come through that as well. Key partnership parts as well. And, over that journey, we've seen how our learnings, not just with OpenAI, but other partners as well, has really helped to strengthen the infrastructure and the cloud capabilities that we serve to our partners who are building these models, who are building and training and grounding their own models in their own domains, and also using those models through our own services.
For those who don't remember that are watching, that was 3 years before the world was introduced to the mass adoption of what would become ChatGPT. So you were not just ahead of the curve, but you were actually helping to build what that curve was going to look like. I'd love to hear from you. aside from the ongoing partnership that you have, what were some of the use cases that you believed were going to be most important for Microsoft customers as you were building this partnership?
So I think over that trajectory of time, let's just say, even going back a couple of years, for some time, it's been evident that we're in a different space from maybe 20, 30 years ago, where the data sets are growing, our capability on the compute side is growing, and put together with AI capabilities and algorithms and technologies, the three have really created a sort of spiraling effect in the foundational capabilities in AI. And so as the generative AI era opened out here, I think it's been fascinating to see not just the key use cases that are evolving here, but just the sheer creativity that's been spawned in everybody who touches its mind, including my 87-year-old mother, who has countless points of views on what should be done better, how to really use it, and how to maximize its use. So it's amazing. And so when I look at some of the research that people like the World Economic Forum and Nielsen and others are doing, this technology is now really meant to is affecting or at least is predicted to affect the way a whole swathe of us work, and also how we think in some ways, right? It's spawning creativity, efficiency, innovation, giving us access to things that we never believed that we could possibly do ourselves. So, for example, everybody could be a coder if they so needed to be a coder as well. And we underestimate that capability when we're in the technology industry. But actually, if you're not in the technology industry and suddenly you're given the power and the enablement to go and be a coder in a space where you may have gone through school and somebody said, yeah, maybe that's not your forte, or you just didn't get it. This is an amazing capability. I mean, when we talk about democratizing AI and empowering every person and organization on the globe to do more, I think this is at the fundamental capability of that, to enable people to be more efficient, more able, more creative, and really innovative. It's super exciting.
I can't tell that you're excited about this at all. What I love about what you said is that in every sentence that you strung together, it was really about augmentation. You described it as augmentation versus automation.
Absolutely.
A lot of leaders get caught up in the automation part, and I get it. Some of the things that they're always looking at are cost efficiency, scale, savings, margin increase, and it's natural, I guess, to see the promising technology like this hit that direction. But since you've been so closely involved in the OpenAI integration and partnership, I'd love to hear more about your thoughts of what does augmentation look like? So let's pretend that we have a bunch of decision makers in the room with us, and they probably maybe prompted one or two times, so they don't really know yet the power of this stuff. But now they have to be convinced to rethink or reimagine the future of work. What are some of the ways that you would get them excited or open their minds toward augmentation, say whether it's ChatGPT or just generative AI in general?
So, I mean, look, every employee, every functional role, every business, and I think, even the sort of more defined professionals in terms of developers and others, all want to use this technology. They are all looking at this and saying, well, how do we embrace these tools, and how do we make our roles a little bit more, I guess, agile and also easier? For example, some of the mundane tasks that we all do, being able to do some of that in a simpler way, in a smoother way, in a more efficient way with some of the tools is really certainly one of the places that we're seeing people pick up the tooling and use it themselves. Even, and I think I read something earlier this week that said, even when companies don't actually advocate that as a process, people are still using that to be able to say, well, how is this going to make me more efficient? can I write that a little bit quicker? Can I classify this a little bit quicker? Can I go and find out something that's in my data set that I wouldn't have seen before? We're even seeing in terms of those that have data in Fabric, how they're able to use Copilot to go and interrogate the data that might be either in the structured, unstructured environment as well. So where are those little nuggets that I can make a little bit simpler, a little bit quicker for me? From a business perspective, I think as a business leader, the recurring themes in terms of, yes, how can I increase efficiency in terms of making this new technology accessible to the different functions and the different employees, but also how can I delight my customer? Is there another way that I can improve the experience of whatever I'm creating or whatever process or service I'm offering? How can I increase that environment and their experience of that environment and their satisfaction in that? So, for example, we're seeing a whole load of chatbots, for example, and I guess the chatbot sort of theme there very much in terms of domain constrained, so easy to put together and build maybe a copilot around your data set as well. But then also it's available 24/7. It's able to perhaps answer questions and queries with a little bit more accuracy, maybe, and with the right grounding, be able to fulfill all of those sort of business needs as well. And then I guess the final sort of utopia is how can I use my data, my environment to not just connect, but also create the new and the new possibilities, new areas to go and new revenue areas.
Yeah, everything that you talked about is really about getting people excited to ask new questions, ask different questions, ask what's possible. I joke with executives. I always say WWAID in any given circumstance, and that's what would AI do, and to help sort of spark or provoke a response that is reminding them that the human collaboration with generative AI is incredibly powerful, and it unlocks all of the things. For example, like, I don't know what I don't know, but the more I explore, the more I experiment, there are opportunities here to create growth, create new value. And I guess at the end of the day, net new value is what innovation is it's all about. And speaking of innovation, I'd love to ask you about Azure and Azure OpenAI, which is already used. I was just writing this down, by over half of the Fortune 500 companies today, which is pretty astonishing. So can you tell us more about the adoption trends you're seeing with customers? Are we in the early innings? What are some of the breakout use cases that you've seen? I'd love to hear more on that.
Yeah, I mean, so what I see is that, so the other part that we didn't talk about, Brian, is I also have a bunch of labs globally, 6 labs across the globe, ranging from, sort of Munich to Washington here to Shanghai, Kobe, Japan, and Uruguay, and San Francisco. What do these labs do? They work with partners who've got hardware, software, or AI requirements, time to market, and they can come in and they can work with people who know how to use our services and products and quickly build a proof of concept or pilot and reduce their time to market. Now, within that, what I've been able to do is really see a whole vast swathe of use cases that come in that certainly have really moved from, some of those from the traditional AI that we've been seeing in machine learning, the more analytical AI, some of the predictive capabilities, to how can I go and look over different, more heterogeneous data to create the next level of insights, to really be able to create use cases that give them maybe an ability to look through not just where they would have done some sort of time series analysis before, but how do I add that together with maybe some subject matter expertise that otherwise would have existed in logbooks or some other unstructured data capability. Now, being able to put the two together, for example, with some of our customers, has allowed them to say, well, I actually have a level of optimization, efficiency, really smart root cause diagnosis in, say, a manufacturing environment where they've been able to bring together OT data and IT data and that structured, unstructured data to be able to say, okay, how do I go and root cause diagnose any challenges that may be on, say, a factory floor as well. And so where we've seen customers there have been both in terms of those that want that technology to improve the efficiency, say, on a factory floor, but then others that have come in as ISVs that may have been doing some of this stuff in a more hard-coded, brittle manner through an application space, to take their software to that next level as well, to be able to say, okay, I've now got multiple sources of data, documentation, even sort of spoken reels, transcripts, to data that comes from equipment, for example, and then the sort of real-time eventing data that might come out of equipment, and say, well, okay, given what I know in terms of the normal root cause diagnosis processes that I've gleaned from my experts, how can I get the next level of insights and even prompts for further diagnosis as well?
I was just thinking, like, it's a matter of what you're describing is this wonderful moment in time where business leaders have a new future to lead toward. And I don't know if they realize it into that full extent. No pressure, leaders out there, no pressure. But you're describing iteration, and you're also describing innovation.
That's right.
And the iteration is unlocked by asking you questions. What if, where can we, what about? And innovation is sort of exploring all of the results of these things, that now that we know this, what can we do in these new directions? And I think that's really fascinating.
There's another word in there as well, Brian. See what you think. I think there's also a change in expectation. People are beginning to change what they expect of an environment, a system, and maybe even individuals. I don't know. What do you think there?
So I could go. I'm going to just keep it short. I can go on forever on this. I call it digital narcissism. There is the more you unlock with new capabilities, the more you want, the faster you want it. And I've led research on this over and over again. But just to give you an idea, some of the latest research that shows that, not related to AI, but drone deliveries in suburban homes, for example, you order your groceries or what have you. The first 3 times, if it takes an hour, it's exciting because a drone is coming to your house. The 4th time, it's, why is it taking so long? And we just learn to expect more. And so your expectations are exactly right on. And I wrote that down because I'd love to see studies that demonstrate then what the psychology of it that leads to it, but then also how do you amplify and accelerate that as a skill? If my expectations are going to change, then how do I optimize it to bring the most out of my systems, my people, my processes? Are they the right processes, for example? That's next generation business transformation. So my short response is I love it. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's an alarm bell, a wake-up call to all of us that this train has left the station, and for each of us, our customers and consumers are also raising their expectations of us. Our work colleagues are raising their expectation of us. And I mean, gone are the days where I can walk in with, those plastic slides and put them on look for my machine these days and say, let's put that. I mean, you've got, like, it's a PowerPoint or something else, or you talk through it. We've moved on. And I think here there's another cliff face that we've just faced as well, where our expectations as humans are changing.
Yeah. Oh, you just made me think of something too. Like I've changed how I work, my own personal expectations of what I expect, what I'm capable of. The more you unlock, the more the more curiosity you beget. I think one of the things I love about your partnership with OpenAI, for example, is in my day-to-day workflow, I love the fact that I can keep a historical records of everything that I've done where things were augmented. And I revisit that, and I revisit my exchanges, and I can see over time how my exchanges get more sophisticated, more complicated, even more creative, where you bring in different dynamics or different personas so that you're challenging yourself, and it's a wonderful intellectual sparring partner, and it leads to, ironically, greater humanity, greater creativity, the things that we worry about. But I think to your point, expectations on one side is that we could overlook it, but on the other side, the more that we embrace it, the better we can all be together, especially bringing people along with us who've not had their expectations changed or elevated. And on that note, speaking of Azure and OpenAI, so at ServiceNow, we have our own domain-specific approach to building LLMs. And we when we talk to the market, we talk about ServiceNow as a platform. And as such, we allow customers to bring their own LLMs, like OpenAI with Azure, to create GenAI workflows, for example. I would love to hear like, what you're seeing with customers that are taking advantage of, say, Now Assist, which is our GenAI intelligence on the platform, and Azure AI.
Yeah. So I think the work that we've done on ServiceNow is pretty astounding, and it's leading edge, and it's putting stuff together across the domains that people work in. So it's bringing together that sort of, how do I, those that might operate in the Teams environment, those that might operate in a 365 environment, those that might want to say, well, I'm coming in from the ServiceNow experience. And that sort of Microsoft Graph Connector work that we've done here really helps to really allow people to say, well, I don't care which frontier that came from. I don't care what tool I've used to get it. I want to get that work done, that document created, that ticket opened, and I want it to happen seamlessly, and I want my ticket to be answered within a time in the best quality. I think it really helps people to say, well, this now brings the technology to the way I work. And if I've got some policy that needs to interact with the work I'm doing, it's all there at their wherewithal to start putting it together. And I can only imagine as you evolve that over the next months and years, that becomes even closer to the way people work and think, with those really, really great outcomes linked to the best technology that's out there. So you start, if there's a better model out there, you'll use that better model to be able to say, okay, you know what, OpenAI, the Azure OpenAI model has moved on. How do we that's already integrated in there, so your user. So I think it's truly exciting, and I think those that have applauded the way that you've launched that and that you've driven that through your users, absolutely right. I'm super excited to see what you do next with it.
So am I. I spend a lot of time with our customers in our innovation centers, and it's just always fascinating that when someone sees it for the first time, it's just a game changer. And we talk about the future of work, and it's interesting to see that right now in an era of Gen AI, work itself could be reimagined. We offer things like process optimization, and there's that, which is fantastic. But then there's also just process reimagination with Gen AI reimagining your work for you. And boy, the stories I could tell. But actually, going back to innovation centers, one of the questions I get, and I would love to hear your take on this. I get this question all the time. It's new. Everybody's learning. Everybody is trying to get their arms around all things Gen AI, LLMs, you name it. And so, for example, whereas we provide a domain-specific approach, Microsoft takes a general purpose approach, but customers don't necessarily understand what that means. And they naturally tend to think, like, I'll be honest with you, one of the questions I get all the time is, so what is the difference between ServiceNow, your LLM, and Microsoft's LLM, as if it's a competitive choice? Can you help sort of clear, like, what's the best answer I can give to them?
It's not competitive.
Okay, done. Thanks.
So look, horses for courses is my phrase here, right? Which is that, people have model needs for what their task is, and the best model that they can apply in the task, in the moment that they're trying to solve something, and in the environment that they're trying to solve something. We certainly have our North Star of our OpenAI models in terms of our exposure to our first-party services. So that's certainly what you see, whether you go and use Bing or whether you go and use our 365 products, or countless other products that we have in terms of our co-pilots, our Power Platform, our ability to bring together the enterprise products there, but also in the consumer products that people might be using in terms of Windows, Bing, and others as well. And so that's certainly one aspect that we see. And there you will see that they are general capabilities in terms of classification, summarization, and they'll keep improving as those models get better as well. But also we recognize that people have their own data sets in their own enterprise environments, and they want to be able to have models that are either grounded on that data, so being able to use some of the more general models in that space, or build their own models on their data as well. And for those, we have actually got multiple tooling capabilities. So Copilot Studio, for example, will allow you to, within seconds, by the way, connect to your data, build yourself a Copilot, and be able to expose that through your API or other format. We also have AI Studio. So if you're actually building your own model or actually taking a more developer approach to building Copilot, you can actually have the right tooling from Azure Machine Learning to be able to do that as well. And then on top of that, being able to expose your model to your customers is something else that we've embraced as well, in terms of either model as a platform that allows you to go and position your model so that others can download that and use that in their environment, or model as a service that actually allows you to launch that as an API with not having to worry about the cloud capabilities on the back end as well. So really being able to say, well, look, we totally understand that if you're in a certain domain and you've got that domain experience and or domain data and or have different specific needs in terms of privacy, security, accessibility, and all the rights around that, you will go and build your own model and or Copilot. And so providing that tool set to be able to allow our partners to be able to do that, so that the best domain experience and capabilities come out through these generative AI technologies.
That was a wonderful answer, and I'm glad we recorded this so that I can play it back for for customers all the time and for myself. Something you said there, actually, models as a service, made me think like what you're really describing is intelligence as a service, and that's something that, like as you said, horses for courses. It becomes evident as you use it and as you become more curious and inquisitive around what's happening with the data as you do more. So for example, on our side, let's say it's case summarization, or it's sentiment analysis, or it's process optimization. Everything that you're doing along the way, you're learning also along the way, and that data becomes something that we can tap into to be better, right? So one of the things that makes us better, for example, as you were describing some opportunities here, I thought, well, on one side of it, we could use GenAI on our platform, for example, to surface the best answer for something you need, whether it's an HR or service scenario. But you could also use GenAI, for example, to craft the knowledge that is served up in that moment based on what people consume the most, the best, what they like. And especially now in an era where the consumer is so involved in every trend that you talked about at the beginning of this discussion. I call it TikTok brain, for example. We as consumers are moving faster. We need to see things differently. And so Gen AI, I think, also plays a role in serving up the type of information that we need to consume.
That
Whether
expectation again.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I think you're right. We're at this point where paradigm shift is happening, right? Where Gen AI is making apps truly intelligent, right? Where we go from a constrained interfaces, narrow domain that's usually sort of hard-coded data, and really difficult to change, to an environment that's actually agile, usually natural language interaction, more increasingly anyway. Being made constantly bespoke for according to your data and your needs and your preferences, and super agile to change constantly, quickly deliver new features. It's like AI with a rocket ship underneath it.
Yeah, it sure is. And what you also just described is the human brain. We 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 can help be more agile. We have to think differently. This is an incredible moment. So I guess that'll lead right to the last question, because I'm pretty sure we're over time. And I don't want to stop. Actually, I can keep talking. All right. So let's say you're a CEO, or you're someone who wants to influence the future of the organization in some capacity. So take us away with the advice. What are the things they need to be paying attention to? And I'm going to throw you a curveball here. So what do they need to be paying attention to? And what do you wish they were asking more about?
Okay, so let's go with the second one first. So certainly the wish is certainly in terms of, I think, what are those use cases that I really need to double down on in terms of increasing my workforce ability to thrive in their workforce, to empower them, to make them feel really confident with this technology, such that they see it as a enabler and something that augments their daily view. I think that alone would get most people that sort of next step up of productivity, efficiency, gains, whatever they want to see there. Just why it would all be powered up to function at 10 rocket fuels as opposed to just the 6 or whatever. The second thing I think would be, well, how do I make my customers even more ecstatic about what they're using in the environment? Are there different technologies and tools that I can bring to make their environment better? And certainly that last one, which is, and then what are the new revenue areas? Does this process collapse? Does this process allow new agents in it? Does, there are other people that are servicing different parts of this process, new partnerships that create different revenue areas. I mean, I'm seeing certainly in certain areas, certainly like, for example, in the sort of financial industry, where we're actually looking at, how do those process flows that have been working over generations get enhanced with not just digitization, but now the next level of, well, how do I improve it with AI as well? And suddenly you see that the process sometimes collapses, but actually sometimes new agents occur in it that either enhance databases that are along the way with extra information, adding in structured information. And these are people that have a role, organizations that have a new role to play in this environment. So I think we haven't scraped the surface even yet here of what are the new business models that are coming. So that's why I'm particularly interested, in your work and the work that you've been looking at in terms of that business transformation, how we're going to discover the next.
It is super interesting. The thing that I don't hear from executives is, how is AI changing the fundamental business assumptions that I have in my company around models, processes? And that's a big question. I mean, you have to be ready for the answer. So that's why we see more automation than augmentation. But I do believe, though, for those leaders who are willing to ask different questions, again, WWAID, for example, we have yet to see what a true AI first company looks like. Remember with Web 2 and mobile, we saw the rise. Well, Web 1, we saw digital first companies like Amazon, and with mobile, we saw mobile first companies like Uber and Airbnb. We will see, aside from the chat GPTs of the world, like the services, the companies that go right to consumers, what that AI first business looks like is going to be so transformative. So business model innovation, this is that time. And it's democratized for everyone, right? It's like we get to have a say in our future. I want to inspire people to take that on.
And Brian, to that point, then, one question that really, I guess, top of mind sometimes for me at a time like this, where you said at the very beginning of the podcast that it's really, frankly, quite overwhelming, even for those of us that are immersed in this stuff every day, with the sheer amount of new data, new findings, new technology, everything that's being flooded towards us. How do you then, based on the work that you did with, LifeScale, how do you see this evolving in terms of how individually we thrive in this environment? What do we need to think about there?
Wow. Well, that's a deep question. Thank you for asking it. I host this event called Renaissance, and it's a play on AI being in the word Renaissance. So it's also a play on the fact that this is a renaissance, and it's different than the digital transformations we've seen over the years. This is an absolute opportunity for total transformation. And the Renaissance event brings together startups and investors in intimate environments so that it's just socializing, networking, conversations. It just makes everything a little bit more approachable. And the thing that I've learned in these engagements is that everyone's trying to, one, change the world, but also trying to find their place in it. And what I feel is humbling about that, and to come back to your question, is that means it's a moment for us as leaders, as human beings, as moms, dads, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, friends. Where do you want to be in all of this? Do you want to just be disrupted? Do you want to feel overwhelmed by all of these things? Do you want to feel scared about what's happening? Or do you want to describe where you could be a year from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now? And then it's this old philosophy of be, do, get. Figure out where you want to be, do the things to get where you need to be. And that's I'm personally going through that exercise right now.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that particularly because obviously I work with teams. I see people every day in this space. And, and I also see people who are not entrenched in this space, and it can become overwhelming at any moment. So I love the way you're thinking about this. And I'm certainly going to go and dig deeper in your in your intellect here that you shared with everyone.
Oh, wow. Well, coming from you, that is just tremendous. You just made my day. Thank you, Dr. Misra. I would just like to thank you for being on this podcast with us. I'd also like to just take a moment. If you've been watching on video, if you've been listening, thank you. Hopefully this has helped you in some way, shape, or form. But if you have questions, throw a comment, throw a like, throw a share on social media. I will pay attention and make sure that we see it and respond to you. I wholeheartedly believe that you can't publish anything without being part of the community to back it up. And so we look forward to your engagement with us. Dr. Misra, is there anything you want to say in taking us out in closing?
No, just super exciting times. And it's been my pleasure to talk to you today, Brian. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Let's go change the world, because if there was ever a time where we get to do something about it with AI, with GenAI, and partnership collaboration with automation and augmentation, we have been given the gift of a cognitive exoskeleton where we can do amazing things. And I look forward to seeing what you can do. So thank you.